Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz trumpeter, flugelhornist, and composer Michael Sarian. We talked to him mid-August 2020 during the COVID-19 lockdown about releasing an album during a pandemic. His latest 2020 CD, New Aurora, is a great listen. He was born on a warm Tuesday in Canada, only to be whisked away to Argentina at the age of 1. He ended up relocating to New York City in 2012 to pursue a master's degree in jazz studies at New York University, and now his latest release is his fourth as a band leader. He's putting some mileage on that odometer, and he's got a great story. Enjoy.
Thanks for taking a minute out today.
Of course, thank you.
Absolutely. So let's just dive right in here. You got a brand new album. I've really enjoyed listening to it. So talk to me a little bit about New Aurora. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the album and just first and foremost, what's it like to release material during a global pandemic?
If nothing else, it's giving me something to look forward to and work towards, even though what that is very different. There's no touring, there's no nothing like that. So it's challenging finding new creative ways to kind of, not celebrate the music, but kind of, just go through the rituals of what releasing an album is, So it hasn't been great. It hasn't been terrible. It's just been different, challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about the artistic approach to this album.
So, my previous releases were very different. They were all 7-piece with my 7-piece band. Musically very different, very a lot of arranging, a lot of writing. I wanted to do something completely different, acoustic, with more giving the players more liberty, just relying more on listening and playing together as opposed to my writing. So my friend Luis Baque, who has a great studio, that's where we record, and he's who I've done all my music with. He's always been egging me on to kind of do this sort of music, to more space, more improv, more of a chamber jazz vibe. So last year I just kind of bit the bullet. We put together a session. I wrote some music. I listened to a lot of. I was listening, and it was good timing. But I happened to be listening to a lot of Kenny Wheeler, Paul Motion, Thomas Stanko, people like that, Enrico Rava, who just kind of were the kind of the guiding lights when I was trying to put together the music and the aesthetic, if you will, for this project.
You were born in Canada, moved to Argentina. You have a unique beginning. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood and how music became this world that you're in now.
So we moved to Buenos Aires when I was 1, and my brother and I, my brother's slightly older, we both took piano lessons from a young age. So I started when I was 6. We always had that at home. My parents they're not artists, they're not musical, but they, appreciation for the arts and appreciation for music was always there. Especially since we started piano lessons at such a young age. Then the school we went to had a very good arts program, music program, so I started playing trumpet in middle school. We played in the concert band and jazz band with friends in and out of school, so I always had that, to kind of keep me busy. I didn't really necessarily come up within the jazz tradition or, playing jazz or at least the way it's, maybe supposed to be done or it's done here, where, you're gigging, you're at jam sessions. It was just about making music with my friends, and it wasn't a lot of horn players, so it was a lot of maybe rock bands and singer-songwriters and that kind of vibe. And then when I was in my late teens, early 20s, really started getting more into jazz and what that meant.
Talk to me a little bit about coming to New York City. Was that always a dream of yours to actually make it to the Mecca of jazz?
Not really. I feel like music for me was always something I kind of just did. I never set myself goals. For better or for worse, that's the way I was. No, actually, in 2004, I went to college in Pennsylvania at a small liberal arts school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, called Muhlenberg College. My older brother, he came to NYU. Just because I didn't want to do what he did, I didn't come to NYU or to New York. So then I went to Pennsylvania, and then I went back home to Buenos Aires for a few years, and finally, 2012. I decided to come to New York, and it was really an eye-opening experience. It really kicked my ass. My very first experience with school was at a Joe Lovano ensemble, and man, that was one of the most terrifying days of my life. And just going home feeling defeated, in a good way. It showed me what I needed to do, what work needed to get done in order for me to kind of move forward in this city, in this community of musicians. It was very scary, but I needed it. It was a kick in the butt that I very much needed.
I have to know, every once in a while on my radar, I'll hear someone that's been in Allentown, and I loosely had a relation with Billy Joel back when I was a kid. My dad grew up in Long Island, and it was a relative of a relative. But I always liked the song Allentown, and I wonder if the Allentowners embrace it or if they're tired of it.
I think, just the vibe I get, I think they would be tired of it, of the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'd be tired of it, but I was very much on campus all the time. We didn't really go to downtown Allentown all that much, but honestly, no. I think I remember being in bars and listening it and hearing it blasting on the radio. So who knows?
Nice. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's the answer I was looking for. So there's got to be some level of it. It's good.
Yeah.
What do you like the best about being a musician?
Obviously, making music and playing with people and getting to make creativity is, really a blessing and privilege. But also, I do like the liberty that it provides. I get to make my own schedule for the most part. I get to, it's as much as we do have jobs and gigs, and we're playing other people's music, and we're playing, something that maybe is not inherently ours at times. It is something it's a world where we can make our own decisions, at different extents many times. If we're playing, I don't know, a Broadway show or even a wedding band, we still get to make decisions to a certain extent. And especially if I'm writing my music, I get to make what I want to make. And I don't know if other people in other kind of, worlds and jobs get to have that much control and freedom over what they're doing.
What was the first live jazz show you ever saw that made you think that was something you wanted to do with your life?
Bill Purcell, yeah. I was 13. My dad, again, my parents, as much as they support, the arts and music, they're not musicians, and especially jazz. My mom heard a lot of the oldies, a lot of Motown, and even some newer stuff as well. And my dad was more into classical music. But we never really had jazz. I just kind of got into jazz because I played the trumpet, and then some of my friends, or my older brother's friends, they were into jazz, and this kid now plays trumpet. Let's kind of talk to him and try and make him play with us. So I kind of got into jazz on my own. And when I was 13, Bill Purcell with his trio came to Argentina, and I guess someone told my dad about it. And my dad was like, well, I don't know anything about this, but if he's supposed to be really good, then I'll take my son. And my son seems to like jazz, so I'll take my son and a couple of his friends to go see him. And I remember, and I remember like not understanding anything at all that was happening. It was just so weird, but I knew that it was cool, and I knew that it was something that was worth, paying attention to. And I remember like buying his album, his CD Ghost Town, which I still have and I still love to this day. But I remember like listening to it and like listening to it with friends even. And everyone was like, "What the hell is this?" And like, no, like we don't get this. And I was like, I don't get it either, but I just had the urge to like listen to it over and over again to like, I don't know, figure it out. Or so yeah, Bill Purcell when I was 13.
Man, I got a great Bill Purcell story for you, and it's going to be on the cusp of me asking you something COVID-19 related. I got married last summer, and I've been with my wife for 4 years, and with what I do, I take her to a lot of jazz shows. So March 3rd, March 4th, Bill Purcell comes to Kansas City, and he's the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. I get tickets, and she's like, "What's this show going to be like?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea what to tell you. Like, I know jazz, but it's not going to be straight ahead or something that you're kind of used to. It's just going to be a unique experience." And he comes out, and Petra Hayden's with him. It's that trio where she's singing. Yeah. So they're doing their thing, and like 2 or 3 times, my wife starts crying during it. She's so moved by it. And then towards the end of the show, they start singing "We Shall Overcome." And Petra stands up. She has a big kind of dress gown on. The crowd stands up. She's like the priestess. Everybody starts standing up and starts singing. They're swaying. It's like they knew that COVID-19 was coming. Like there was something in the air. And now that I look back, that was the last live jazz show in the old world that I saw before all this began.
In the old world, man.
Yeah, like in the BC before Corona, and it's like it's wild, And I think about that, and the last jazz thing I did was I saw Maxine Gordon talking about Sophisticated Giant and Dexter Gordon, and I got her to sign a book. And I remember leaving the college on March 12th, and I'm like, how is this going to be significant? Like, not that it wasn't going to be, but the very last jazz thing in that old world that happened, Maxine Gordon signed that book and signed it March 12th. And I'm like, wow. So anyway, I've talked about the Bill story, but the fact that you said that, I'm like, man, the show was so eclectic. Right after that song, he went into Ziggy Stardust right after that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like he'll do that, And he just played a show. He just played a show here in Brooklyn a few weeks ago. Like I forget whose backyard it was, but I unfortunately missed it. But that's those things are happening, and that is promising,
Yeah, it really is. In fact, I saw 2 shows here in Kansas City. Bobby Walker did a CD release at a drive-up. Everybody was in their cars, and he did a show for Keeping It Real. And then the person that actually coordinated is a pianist named Jackie Myers, and she had a show. So we've seen some shows. We've gotten out. It's been hopeful. And in fact, there was a dude that ran into me, and I had a Downbeat shirt on. And he just did not look like a guy that would be at a jazz show. And I thought he was jacking with me. He was like, "What's that mean?" And I'm like, it's a magazine. It's like the Jazz Bible. And he was like, "Oh, man." So he starts talking to me, and I realized, this dude looked like he should have been in a Leonard Skinner show. And he starts really kind of talking to me about jazz, and I realize he's a musician. But the cool story about it is that his daughter, who's 13, was there, and since the pandemic started, they started listening to a jazz show at night, and she totally got hooked on it and wanted to go see a jazz show. And it was like perfect. Yeah, so it's like the silver linings and the thing. So I guess that's kind of like my lead into this next question. We're clearly in a pandemic. We don't know when we're going to come back, but we are. When we do, what do you hope both musician and fan realizes about this time away from jazz?
Wishful thinking. Hopefully they realize the value that live music provides. Not even just jazz, but even like the smaller venues, that we as musicians rely on, and they as consumers rely on. Whatever, like Blue Note, the Vanguard, all these, spaces. But and I think those fans, like, the people who went to the Vanguard, the people who went there and supported the music, they're invested in the music. They're invested in, I think for the most part, like they're not, they go to the Vanguard. I'm talking beyond just the tourists, that'll go because they heard of the Vanguard or someone, recommended it. Like, they're there. They're gonna keep supporting, hopefully, and but people who would just go to, like, I don't know, Rockwood Music Hall, or the venues that didn't cost $40-50, you know, to get in, that you could just go in for free and have a drink minimum or pay $5 cover. I hope, you know, people realize that we were, like, actually working. We're, you know, trying to make a living playing these gigs and, you know, living off of tips sometimes, and that all went away, and you don't get that experience anymore. But now they kind of see how, if nothing else, like, we become vocal for, like, out of necessity, that it's the community is struggling, because the community has always been struggling, but more so now because we don't have those gigs, you know. So hopefully the audience just becomes more aware of what we're providing, you know. Yeah,
absolutely. So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a perception or their version of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans. But you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I have no idea.
Good job.
I think we're just trying to figure that out. I don't know. Who am I? Honestly, the past 5 months have been very introspective. You know, I live by myself, and it's like I'm by myself, so I have a lot of time with my own thoughts. So it's, I don't know. Just try to you know, do right by you, by what you do, and the people who are around you, either virtually or in person. You know, I think other than that, it doesn't really matter who I am. Just as long as I'm not a terrible person, and I can provide some sort of comfort, happiness, and support to people in my life, I think that's my main goal.
Right on. Great answer, man. Hey, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. Good luck with the album, and stay safe out there in the world.
Thank you, man. Yeah.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Argentina, Canada, America, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Michael for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.